let's begin our call. It's an awesome Friday morning here in Portland. I got my exercise in this morning. I was running a little bit late getting back. So that's why I'm not in the office at the moment, but we'll be here shortly. Let's talk about our gratitude. Every single Friday morning, we start with two things, and that's by design, guys. We talk about what we're grateful for, and we talk about our values. So let's start with our gratitude. Who wants to share gratitude? Barb, you have a lot to be grateful for. We had a conversation yesterday, and I'm thrilled about where you are right now, but why don't you start?
Hey, very good morning, Chris. Actually, Bill here.
Okay, Bill.
I need to work on that. I will happily speak on behalf of Barb too. I, wanted to take just a couple minutes this morning to express my gratitude for Dawn Soroka. I don't know what job description Experience possibly posted when they originally got her a few months ago, but between a pandemic, the PPP loans, the merger that we're going through, I just really wanted to pass along my profound appreciation for how she shows up every day and truly just how amazing she is as an executive and a partner in this entire experience. I know from an ops perspective, everybody probably doesn't get the same type of exposure to her, but just the world that she's bridging for us with incorporating with the Kinney organization, the way that she just improves us, and really just her sharing her network of people that she knows. It's been a blessing waking up every day, and just really wanted to say how much I appreciate having her in our corner.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Bill. That means a lot. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to Dawn as well. The only thing I will add, Bill, is she shows up every single day willing to serve others. And that, skill comes along with that. And she definitely brings skill with that. But very rarely do you find someone so willing to just serve. And she does that every single day. So thank you for sharing that. That means a lot. Charlotte, what would you like to share?
I just want to say thanks to John Powers for taking time this week to talk with me through some lead processes. We've made some changes, and he was kind enough to take of his precious time to share with me and give me some great tips. So thank you, John. It was very helpful.
Awesome. Guy always shows up, doesn't he? Very cool. Thank you, Charlotte. Katie Benson.
There we go. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to share some gratitude for Deldy. Apparently she was on some kind of a Zoom with a region where she shared her story, and unbeknownst to her, there was somebody considering being an individual partner that heard that interview. And when I talked with him yesterday, he was like, that pushed me completely over the edge just to listen to the growth that she's experienced and, how much her business has grown even through a pandemic. He's like, it all confirmed any questions I might have had about joining the organization. So he's like, so let's accelerate, let's go. So thank you, Deldy.
That's awesome. By definition, Deldy's business grown means she's already surpassed what she did in 2019 in 2020. So she and her entire organization and leadership there alongside of her, Philip and every one of her agents, and gosh, the ops team, they were not prepared. Well, no, they must have been prepared. They may not have had any idea of what was going to happen in 2020 for that organization, but just, John actually and I were talking about Deldy this morning, in that no matter what shows up in her world, whether people are healthy, whether people are sick, whether people are there, whether people aren't, the woman puts her head down and works because she loves what she does and she loves to build business. So we're grateful to have her as a partner. Thanks for sharing, Katie. Holly, would you like to share some gratitude?
Well, one, I wanted to tack on to the Deldy gratitude train. Really remarkable about how honest and open or even vulnerable Deldy is on our group Zooms that show that track record of success and that growth path that we were just talking about. Really appreciate how she shares the examples of where she was, which was impressive on its own right, but how she plugged in to grow. And it's setting an example for our agents and for our directors of sales, and very appreciative there. The other person that I'm extremely grateful for today is Jeanette. We have a really interesting opportunity with Inman, and Jeanette was gracious enough to spend an hour with me earlier in the week. And I will tell you, I learned so much from her shares and from her perspective on business and getting a seat at the table, and just really appreciate her time and who she is.
Awesome. I echo that. Had an awesome conversation with Jeanette as well, who's been on fire, by the way. I think I shared that last week. I think her organization has 17 pending for almost 18 million in escrow. And that is not, some people think, well, gosh, $1 million price point, that sounds easy. Those deals are tough. Every single one of them are tough. Like, those are not easy negotiations. Those are not easy clients to meet expectations. And her entire team is just showing up and meeting expectations of clients and really just taking that market by storm, continuing to. So love that. How about one more? I thought I saw Deldy's hand raised, maybe not. One more piece of gratitude. Who'd like to share gratitude? There we are. Go ahead, Deldy.
Unmute self. Well, I just have to say thank you, because I am only good as the people that I'm surrounded with. And I am grateful for every single one of you, Katie, Holly, Chris, every one of my partners who lift me up every single day and challenge me every single day. So I'm just super grateful. Still, I wake up every day, Chris. I'm going on almost 2 years. It feels like Keller Williams all over again, and it just keeps getting better and better. So thank you. Thank you for this organization and this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Deldy. My pleasure. My pleasure. All of our pleasures. All right, let's talk about our values, guys. Every week we take a moment and we reflect on the values that we are all grounded by. Those values are built on growth, right? Which part of that is giving and relationships and opportunity and wealth and thanks and humility. Where did you see one of our values demonstrated this week that you want to share? And we'll just take a couple of them because we're going to dive in. But Holly, why don't you start us off?
Georgie, oh my goodness, she is on fire with her talent appointments. I know that's one of the biggest challenges when our team leads or expansion partners start to really look at their teams differently. And Georgie is listening and taking to heart all of the talent consulting, asking great questions, and most importantly, implementing. And whenever you start talking to someone that's like, yes, I'm doing these activities, and now I have 3 and 4 and 5 candidates for director of ops, and I have, a really strong candidate for director of sales in just a month or two, it shows that the results are working, but that's because she's willing to do the work. And it's really exciting to watch that happen.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, that just shows, that the value of growth and that is growth in learning new skills and being willing to put yourself out there and make different types of phone calls and have different kind of conversations. That type of growth will actually lead to business growth as well. As her organization begins to grow with people and production. And here's what I'll share with the group, because many of us may be looking for talent right now. And we think, well, gosh, how do we look for talent while we're in production? And how do we manage both sides of that? Georgie is doing that. Georgie, you show up and you are your production for your organization right now. And at the same time, you're able to block out that time to make sure you're having talent conversations as well. It is a phenomenal demonstration of one of our values of growth, which isn't easy, and it takes hard work. We're going to talk about hard work in just a little bit. Katie, where have you seen our values shown up?
Couple people actually. Oscar and John Robert have been practicing scripts together and sending me their script files for feedback, which I so appreciate. So John Robert for giving of his time to Oscar, and Oscar for focusing on growth and knowing that things like that don't actually come easy and there's practice involved. So being so committed to that practice. And then Kimberly, when she first launched, was getting a master's degree at the same time, taking care of a group of children, and still managed to get through launch. And now that she's got her master's, is just on fire with pending transactions. And so really proud of all of them for exhibiting growth, giving, and just a willingness to dig in and do the work.
Yeah, love that. Love that. How about one more? How about one more? Carter.
Hi there. I'd like to recognize Jordan Lennon-Kugel. Speaking of on fire, her business is on fire. So what's really cool is that she's going to do just about as much business in this 30-day period from end of June through end of July as she did almost the entire first part of the year. And that's because she has committed to growing herself and taking the opportunity to really refocus her business on extreme growth. And earlier in the week, she was leading a great discussion on a hangout. And so just showing that she is truly growing not only in business, but also personally as well. So recognize her.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up two names of partners that are in building phases right now, right? You brought up Jordan, and you bring up Kimberly, and congrats to both of you. Jordan, the last couple of months have closed 7. You have 3 more pending. Kimberly, you've closed 8. You have 4 pending. Both of you have either 3 or 4 listings right now taken. And interestingly enough, it's been in arguably what other people would say is one of the most difficult markets that we've seen. It hasn't shown up that way for you because you've sort of just taken on that challenge and that difficulty, and you've been willing to work, which is all it takes in our industry. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Carter. And thanks for everyone that continues to really refocus on values and making sure that we want to be part of an organization that is values grounded, right? Right. Giving. I'll just acknowledge our group real quick. We were able to give to an incredible organization this week. Experience Giving actually donated to the Willis Family Foundation this week, and that was based on really a foundation that Mark Willis set up for canine early detection of cancer, and it was built on this premise that that he believes and the foundation believes that people can live more experiential lives and potentially will live longer lives experientially if we can detect cancer earlier. Many of you know the story of his wife, and that she lived with back pain for years, like a decade, trying to figure out what was going wrong and why she lived in pain. And eventually she did pass away from cancer unexpectedly, very quickly. Cancer was found in December, and she passed away, I believe, 4 or 5 months later. And what they found is she had cancer for years and years. And so that started this focus and mission of finding that earlier, detecting it earlier. So it's through the growth of our business, through the profitability of our partners and our businesses that we're able to give. That's an incredible demonstration of our values. But also, interestingly enough, we have been focused on giving around our mission, which is experiential lives. So I just wanted to thank everybody for doing that, and thank the board of Experience Giving, our nonprofit, our public charity, for jumping in and making that happen as well. So thank you. All right, guys, we're gonna jump into a conversation, and I'm gonna start it by saying, Houston, we have a problem. We are just a few months past the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 13 mission. What happened in the Apollo 13 mission? Who knows that? Raise your hand. I know that a couple of you are huge NASA fans, but what happened during Apollo 13 that stands out, or that we all remember some 50 years ago? John?
Yeah, they were slated to land on the moon. It was after Neil Armstrong, I believe, and they had all sorts of mission critical issues. Started with a failure in one of the mechanical engines that caused an explosion, and they had a mastermind between NASA on the ground and them up there to get them back home, and they were able to get home safely.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, there are some incredible lessons that I believe we learn from looking at exactly what happened around that Apollo 13 mission. Because the 50th anniversary just passed, I believe it was in April, a lot more information has come out, a lot more research has been done, a lot more recordings of conversations are actually online for us to listen to and to read. Interestingly enough, I think the sad part is the only thing that most of us know about that mission, we learned from a movie by the same name, right? We learned about what happened through not real history, but through Tom Hanks. And we'd like to think that those movies are incredibly accurate, but oftentimes they're not. Here's the most incredible, John, here's the most incredible part about that mission. What struck me as applicable today is that during that crisis, the transcripts and the recordings of the conversations between the astronauts and mission control were incredibly calm. I'm going to say that again. If you go back and either read the transcripts or listen to the transcripts, they were incredibly calm. Now, what struck me is perhaps not so many conversations I have one-on-one with our group, but we run brokerages too, right? And I will tell you, some of the conversations I've had in the last week or two have been so charged with emotion that you'd think that they were on the Apollo 13 mission. And I look at the level of emotion in a conversation around a repair addendum, or maybe an agent, versus the conversations that I listened to between mission control and the astronauts. And I thought, there's a lesson here. So as background, their Saturn V rocket launched around 2:13 p.m. Eastern time on April 11th, 1970, right? They launched from the Kennedy Space Station there in Florida. And it wasn't until April 17th, 1 p.m., 5 days, 22 hours, and 54 minutes later that they got home safely. Think about that. Can you imagine 5 days, 22 hours, and 54 minutes in a capsule with 3 men, no less, not knowing if you're going to live? And yet when you listen to those transcripts and you listen to the conversations, every single one of them were incredibly calm. Why? I want to get opinions from our group. Why were they so calm? Like, what is the lesson there for us? Who wants to share? Joel.
I think one of the lessons is kind of what you hit on a couple of weeks ago when you talked about training, and then when you're deployed, they were deployed, and though you don't go on that mission expecting failure and your oxygen to not work after day 2, it's what happened. And the only way to get yourself back home was to stay calm and come up with a solution versus coming from fear.
Yeah, I agree with that, Joel. Kim.
Unmute.
There you go.
I think that when you trust the tools, the training, just like John said, he had confidence in what they already put together. So in the midst of the crisis is when we need clarity, right? One of the bold laws is clarity is power. And I find that when I'm in the midst of a difficult situation or a breakdown, I have to determine what platform I'm going to stand on to get the most out of it. Am I going to use the situation or allow it to use me? So I'm not just listening to the conversation that's taking place. I'm listening for an opportunity for it to actually work. And if I allow myself to be reactive or negative, then that just fills the space with smoke. I can't see clearly, and it's going to be a disaster. So even if I'm in a tense situation with leadership or with a client, I've already decided that we're going to win because I've chosen to partner with you. I believe in you. We have a difficult situation to resolve. I'm not just listening to you, I'm listening for you, for an opportunity for it to work out positively.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Cam. There's one word I would like everyone to write down, because we're going to share this word right at the end of the call. And if I don't, I want you to hold me accountable to come back to it. You use the word trust. Kim, do you think that the astronauts trusted mission control? Right? Lacey says they were trained to take emotion out and focus. They had training on focus. They had training on removing emotion. They were emotional human beings. If you go back and read about these three men, they weren't emotionless, but on that activity, in that world, in work, they were trained to take emotion out. Right? Jacqueline says, hey, this was a matter of life and death, and they stayed calm. And their lives depended on them staying calm. Guys, I listened to that transcript and I think there's no way. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm not an astronaut, but it was overwhelming calm. So while en route to the moon on April 13th, an oxygen tank exploded. So there's incredible lessons about how they responded, but there's another lesson that I want to share with you. An oxygen tank exploded, right? That it ruptured, and we think, well, okay, well, let's fix that. Well, it's oxygen, guys. Like, that's what they need. The most valuable and critical piece of that entire mission ruptured: their oxygen. Now, the problem was this: as you go back and research exactly what happened in the movie, if you and I didn't watch it, so I just watched the clip. But in the movie, as soon as that happened, they depict everybody rushing around, right? They're rushing around, they're running down hallways, there's stressful voices, but that was only because they wanted you, the viewer, to actually get the fact that this is an urgent situation. That did a disservice, by the way, to all of us, because there was no rushing around, there was no running down hallways, there was no stressful voices. One of the biggest issues around them losing their oxygen tank was that their carbon monoxide levels were going up, and they needed to figure out a way to get them down. In fact, the capsule that they were in, they were supposed to return with 2 people, right? And the problem with that is they didn't have enough oxygen, nor did that capsule, right, allow for the scrubbing of the amount of carbon monoxide that was getting put into the air at that moment. So here's what they had to do. They had to create a filter. They had to create a filter in their capsule. But here's the problem. The immediate thought was, well, just go into the other capsule, get those filters and bring them in. But here's what was really cool about this whole story. The filter in their capsule was round, and the filter in the other capsule was square. They literally had to fit a square peg into a round hole, guys. So what did they do? Well, some would say this is impossible. Like, I can't become that. We can't turn a square filter into a round filter. But here's what they did. In the movie, this was accurate. The engineers came into a conference room and they dumped a bunch of hardware on the table, right? They dumped everything that was literally in that capsule at the time and said, this is what we have. How do we use it? And the engineers, piece by piece, put together a filter. Now, I'm going to show you, if I can really quick, exactly what that looked like. Right on your screen is the Apollo 13 lithium hydroxide canister. This is what they created. And those engineers gave them step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, all the way to step 12. And if you look at what they used, I mean, this thing is jimmy rigged, guys. They used towels, they used cord, they used a plastic bag, but guess what? There was trust that the engineers knew what they were doing. There was calm. Did the astronauts follow direction? Guys, they followed direction. They followed direction because they knew if they did, they had an opportunity to get home. It's an interesting conversation, isn't it? A couple other lessons, right? When something went wrong, what happened? Leadership jumped in to work and solve the problem, right? Leadership on the ground jumped in to solve the problem. You know what I'm proud of is the leadership of the entire organization, right? The leaders that Ben has spent a decade putting together and we've spent a decade putting together are phenomenal at solving problems. See, we wake up every day and say, hey, our job, leadership's job is to provide simple solutions to complex problems. Now, the problem with that is some of us don't love simple solutions. Some of us convince ourselves that no, we're going to need something more than a sock, a towel, a plastic bag, and a cord, guys. And we go out looking for complex situations or complex solutions when all we need to do is follow step 1 through 12 to put that canister together. Mission Control, interestingly enough, couldn't even send those astronauts pictures, guys. There was no pictures to send. They only had to talk. They were only allowed to talk them through it. They just talked them through it. And as you listen to how they talked them through it, there was calm back at the hub. There was calm out in the field, well, out in space, and they got home safely. Incredible lesson for us. One of the researchers around Apollo 13 said this: there's no such thing as a crisis playbook. See, what happened is this: when crisis showed up in our world, and we have multiple crises in our world right now, right? A lot of agents, a lot of teams, a lot of organizations say, whoa, we need a crisis playbook. In fact, we got some of that messaging from our agents. Hey, what do we do now? We need to change this. We need to go into crisis mode. And guess what? There's no such thing as a crisis playbook. You double down on who you are already and what you know already. Like, dealing with a crisis is a natural extension of who you are as a leader or as an agent or as part of an organization. In a crisis, you need 2 things. You need consistency and some flexibility, right? You listen to those guys and they were ridiculously consistent. They were calm and consistent. Well, they were flexible, right? They were certainly flexible. There are 3 crisis principles that show up in Apollo 13. I'm going to give you the 3. If you want to write them down, I'd do it. Number 1, focus on what you can control. They could not control what was going on outside of their capsule, could they? They could control what was going on inside of it. And so they did, right? Focus on what you can control. Number 2, this is an interesting takeaway. They said, write your own story. Don't play the hand you've been dealt. Play the hand you want. Write your own story. Isn't that powerful? We get to write our own story, guys. Number 3, they said, if you don't have a hypothesis on what the outcome is, then you will not know if you're winning or losing. Guys, that's tracking, right? You have to believe you understand what the end will bring. You have to believe that, okay, I am here. My hypothesis on this month, my hypothesis on this quarter, my hypothesis on this year is that we will be here. Now I know if I'm winning or losing. See, if they didn't focus on what they could control, if they did not write their story, well, I promise you other people were writing their story for them as they speak. The media was writing their story, right? When things go wrong, everybody writes your story. Like Inman writes your story. Like your competitors write your story. The guy down the hall is writing your story, right? Don't let that happen. Don't play the hand you've been dealt, play the hand you want. And number 3, have a hypothesis. We talk about hypotheses a lot because we've studied the scientific method and we've talked about how important that is. We talked 3 weeks ago about think like a rocket scientist, right? And challenging how we think and rocket scientists don't try to prove themselves right all the time. They try to prove themselves wrong. And by doing that, they're challenging their hypothesis and they get the outcome they want. So I just thought a huge lesson. Anyone want to share takeaways as they listen to the Apollo 13 story or the lessons, whether it's a leadership lesson there or an activity lesson there? Who wants to share before we tackle this word complexity one more time? Holly?
I think equally as important as trusting each other, that there was no blame. I can imagine if I was on the capsule, I'd be like, gosh, who put the oxygen tank that exploded in here? But that's not the time to blame. It's the time to be calm and go to solutions and trust each other. So just as important as that trust is making sure that you don't fall into a victim mentality.
I hadn't thought about that, Holly. And I think that that's really real, right? As we take a step back and we think if we were there, wouldn't like immediately we may see a certain person's face in our mind like, oh my gosh, how did they not think through this? Why didn't they do this? He told me this was going to work. John said that I should do this. Like Chris said, Holly said, like we oftentimes in times of crisis or difficulty, we'll put that difficulty on someone else, and it's just a coping mechanism for sure. Georgie?
Yeah, speaking of trust, I would say they trust the process. You know, we do have a process. We know what works. It's withstood the test of time, and we have to have faith that process will work even now.
Yeah, I like that. How about Lori Belair?
Hi there.
Hey.
My husband has a saying that he uses all the time, and I love it, and I need to use it more often on my regular everyday. Everything will work out if you let it. And to me, what that means is it's important to trust yourself that you know what to do and to continue with the plan that you already had. I mean, you know, this is assuming that you have a plan, of course, but to trust in yourself to do the things you know you need to do, and it will work out. And it's kind of a hopeful thing. It's like, it will work out. Let it. Stop trying to cause problems along the way. Just let it work.
Yeah, I love that, Lori. You know, the reason why, you know, that statement, everything will work out if you let it. The definition of let is allow, right? By definition, it is do not prevent, do not forbid, just allow. And it seems passive, but the only reason why I would say your husband's statement is correct, and you preface your conversation, well, if you had a plan. If we don't have a plan, then newsflash, and I don't want to contradict, but if you don't have a plan, it won't work out, right? Because you didn't plan for it to work out. You didn't have a hypothesis of it working out. But I think Lori's combination of those three areas of control, or those three crises principles, is pretty phenomenal. If you focus on what you control, if you wrote your story and you had a hypothesis, then 100% everything will work out if you let it, if you allow it, if you don't forbid it or push back on it. So I think it's a real powerful conversation. Now, we said that one of the issues there was they only had some real simple stuff in their capsule, right? Like you'd think, gosh, it's a capsule in space. How do they not have, right, backup filters? And how do they not have, I mean, they put this thing together with like household items, right? I think the reality is they used cloth from a sock at one point in time. I came across a conversation with Patrick Lencioni, and it was a conversation around simplicity versus complexity. And the statement, right? This is a great statement. If we want to write this one down, I have it in my notebook now. It says this. It says, the answer to confusion is always no. The answer to confusion is always no. And Patrick said when he heard that, the only thing that he could think of is this, is that the genius of simplicity is underrated. See, when we think about how they got home, guys, it was incredibly simple, right? They solved the problem in a very simple way, but our problem is, as human beings, we are enamored with sophistication, right? We are just in love with the complicated. Patrick Lencioni in his interview around simplicity brought up a couple quotes from people that were, if we think about the people, we would imagine they are incredibly complex. The first one was Einstein. The man was brilliant, right? Probably one of the most complex thinkers in human history. And yet he wrote in one of his essays this statement: if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you probably don't understand it yourself. Now, there's That's really important, right? Because some of us, even when we're growing our business, we come up with these complicated, right? Economic models, lead generation models, campaigns, technology. And the fact is if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you probably don't understand it yourself. And that came from one of the most complex thinkers in human history. Einstein said that they called him a genius, but he said, I am not a genius. I am just curious. I ask a lot of questions. And this is his quote, and when the answer is simple, then God is answering. That's what he said, right? He was always looking to make things simple. Da Vinci, right? Complicated? Yeah, I mean, his painting, forget his paintings. He was an incredible inventor. He was an incredible engineer. Like just actually study some of his drawings. Oh my goodness, you can't understand them. And yet he said this: simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? We have a history of the most brilliant, most successful, and I would say success based on the impact that they brought to this world, Einstein and Da Vinci, right? They were both focused on simplicity. Whether it looked that way or not, they could explain anything to a 6-year-old, right? They understood that there was sophistication in simplicity. So why do we tend to let complexity take over? I'm going to give you 2 reasons. And both of them are trouble. The first one is pride. Somehow we feel smarter if we're coming up with ideas that are sophisticated and complex. That's truth, right? It is hard for us to be simple sometimes because we want to be smart sometimes, and we don't combine those two. Think about, Patrick Lencioni said, just think about the health industry. We have some of the most complicated diets out. And he said, and you know what? Here's the most simple health strategy. Just sweat every day. If every day you did enough activity to sweat every day, you'll be just fine, right? How complex do we make health? Just sweat every day. You'll be fine. So the first part of why we want to be complicated is pride. And I would argue that our business is very, very simple, right? I have conversations with people and they say, is that it? I mean, is that what you do? Right? I teach expansion systems orientation sometimes, right? And they say, really, that's it? Like they thought they were coming for this complex revelation of how we built our business. And man, we are ridiculously simple. We often say, hey, can we make it simpler? Can it be simpler? Can it be simpler? Like, you guys have got to know me. Like, if anyone thought I was brilliant or intelligent or like, then they get to know me and realize you are one of the most simple thinkers I've ever met. But you know what? There's sophistication and simplicity, right? The other thing is this. The reason why we trend towards complex is because we want things to be easy. And this is where I want to focus on just for a couple minutes. We want things to be easy. We would rather find a complex solution that makes things easy than a simple solution that involves hard work. Be careful, right? That's the reason why we hate technology once we get it, because most people have made, I'm not going to mention names, but most people have made technology ridiculously complicated. And we think, I'm all in. And it's complicated, it does 1,700 things. And guess what? The only reason why we were excited about that is because we thought we wouldn't have to work as hard as we did before. Well, newsflash, technology doesn't mean we don't work hard. Technology has to be simple, right? If those of you who have been working with Brevity for years knows that it is simple. That is why it's brilliant, right? If it's not simple, I promise you, the only reason we want something else is because it's complicated, and we have convinced ourselves that the more complicated it is, the less work we're going to have to do. You think, well, how does that make sense? I promise you, it is the reason why we search for complexity. All good things in life are not complicated, but all good things in life come from hard work. Having a good marriage, not super complicated. Hard work, heck yes, right? Like having a good business, a big business, like Is it complicated? No, it's super simple. Is it hard work? Absolutely. Having purpose, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Having a purposeful life is not complicated. Is it hard work? Yes. Without hard work, nothing is going to be sustainable. But keep in mind, if we wake up and we're not sure what to do or how to do it, then somehow along the way, we got more complicated than this organization runs. And we have to go back and say, you know what? As simple as they shared with me during launch, maybe I should relaunch and do simple, right? Like there's some agents and teams right now relaunching, and you know what? Some of the responses is, gosh, I think I complicated things. It's actually pretty simple. We want them. We want everyone to believe that. See, I would rather someone come up and say, Chris, your systems are just simple. Yeah, that's right. Or, hey, I could do this on my own. Yes, you could, right? That's the point. It's what makes it so successful. What we have to do as leaders, and I'm gonna give one more illustration, and then we're gonna move on to a different topic. But Patrick Lencioni said this. He goes, I actually look at myself as an on-ramp to a one-lane road. Think about that. Is your business simple enough? Some of us run incredibly big teams, right? And by big, I mean just profitable teams. Is it simple enough for people to join and get on that on-ramp, right? Are you an on-ramp to the path to their preferred future? That's what leadership is, but it has to be simple. What we really need to provide are these just simple on-ramps for people. It's easy to get on the ramp. It's a simple path towards success, right? We have to make sure that it's simple. He shared a conversation. Someone asked Gary Kelly, not Keller, Kelly, Gary Kelly, the CEO of Southwest. Southwest runs one of the most profitable airlines. They also run one of the most recommended, right? In terms of customer satisfaction, one of the greatest airlines, Southwest Airlines. And they said, gosh, as they unpackaged what Gary Kelly does to run Southwest, they said, like, why don't your competitors copy this model? They're losing money, you're still profitable, right? And people love you. Why don't your competitors copy? You know what he said? I think it's because it's too simple. They believe it's beneath them as a company to run a business and an airline this simply. Melanie, you put a quote in that we've shared a lot in our organization. A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. Yeah, the problem with that is we lose focus on simplicity and we wind up going towards the complex. So keep in mind, if you take a step back and you say, gosh, my day is not simple enough. My activities seem complicated. My business seems complicated. My contracts seem complicated. Be careful. Be careful because we're going the wrong way. Holly, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, when you started talking about Southwest and it being simple, one of the other things that really ties to our business is that all of their employees know the mission. And so when there's a complicated customer service issue, someone at the gate, someone at baggage claim, whatever it is, because they're mission-based, they're empowered to make that decision. So that simplicity tied to a mission allows that to be executable in a scalable way, which is exactly what you have done with Experience.
Well, that's a good segue, actually. Thank you, Holly. And I would agree with that. Next week and the week after, I just finished rereading a book that Jeanette talks a lot about, The Gold Standard. It's a book written about the Ritz-Carlton, right? And incredible stories of just how do we build a business off of a mission. We continue to do that, making sure that our agents' lives are experiential. I wanted to share a book. I got an early copy of a book. I believe it's coming out this month. I'm not sure, but Bill Perkins wrote a book called Die with Zero. And I heard an interview on it recently as well. I had read a previous book and had joined a group around his previous book. And so that's why I got this copy. And I want to have this conversation because it's related to our mission. So when we think about how do we stay simple, And the way to build a big business, I'm 1,000% convinced people don't join businesses, people don't work for money, they work and join missions. And if we don't execute on our mission, people will leave because they joined a mission, not a human, not a leader, right? Be careful about that. We've joined a mission. So Bill Perkins wrote a book called Die with Zero. And I'm gonna bring you to the top of the arc of the book first, and then we're gonna unpackage it, because at first, I pushed back on this idea of dying with zero, right? At the end of life, if we have things and we've accumulated a lot of money and we have bank accounts filled with money, he says we have lived wrong. He said this quote, "The business of life is the acquisition of memories that we keep." Right? The business of life is the acquisition of the memories that we keep. Now, acquisition is an interesting word, right? We acquire memories throughout phases of our life. His premise and his point of the book, the reason why he wrote this, is he believes that memories and experiences pay dividends, right? So there's lots of books on investing, right? And that's important. Building wealth, critically important, but we have to get really clear about why we're building it. We have to get really clear about what kind of dividends we want. And our mission is not that we're receiving just dividends from investments, but memories and experiences pay dividends. This is his point. We save money for two things, guys. Right? We're all working. We woke up today. We have energy around our business. There's two reasons. Survival, right? It's providing for ourselves and our family. It literally, like primally, that means survival. And memories. Those are the two reasons we save money. Yes? It's, am I taken care of? And what am I going to do? Like, what experiences am I going to have? Positive life experiences is the main reason we go to work. And here's why. Survival is number one, but all of us are doing that. Like here's how I know. You have a computer to hop on a Zoom, right? Like if you have a computer and you can Zoom, then you are surviving. So survival is number one. All of us are surviving. Some of us may want a different level of survival, and I'm glad that you do. And if you keep things simple, you will. But the only thing to talk about after survival then is those memories. There are three things in our lives to focus on, and it's having money, having time, and having health. Right? Those are the three pillars of his book: money, time, and health. The goal is this: we have to have all three at the same time, or none of them are worth it. Think about it. If you have all the health in the world, but you have no more time left, right? That's when you see someone die too young, right? They have all the health and their life was tragically taken. Well, health and time are critically important. But what happens if you have all the time in the world and you're healthy, but you have no money to create those experiences? It's okay to say that money is important. I believe money does allow us to have incredible experiences with those that we love, but also we believe that giving is experiential too. So money allows us to experience what it feels like to give. The goal is to have money, time, and health. But interestingly, at times we chase one of them and we have plenty of one of them while the other two slip away. Right? We have plenty of money, and yet we don't do what we wish to do with the time while we have health. And that is the premise of his book, Die with Zero. If I just have money and I don't have time and I don't have my health, then the money is pointless. If I have all the time in the world and I'm healthy, but I don't have money to create experiences, then I'm wasting an incredible opportunity to create those experiences. It's about choices that we make around those three things, guys. Eventually, our health is going to decline and we will run out of time. We don't want to say that. We don't like to talk about it, but that is a fact of the life that we live in today, right? So eventually, your health is going to decline. And depending on the rate that our health declines, we'll cut down on the amount of time you have to build those experiences. This is what he says in his book, and I quote, "If you work for a bunch of money and then you die with a bunch of money, you have worked for nothing." Who here wants to work for nothing? No one, because we are a purpose-driven group of people. But if you work for a bunch of money and you die with a bunch of money, you've worked for nothing. Now, this is an interesting challenge for me because I'm a Spaniard, and Spaniards come from long lines of savers, and their culture, our culture is this: that you save money and you save money and you save money and save money and save money, and what do you do with it? You then leave it to the next generation, and you build generational wealth. I have no problem with generational wealth. What I have the problem with is my grandmother, when she died, she had plenty of money, but she didn't see her son enjoy it or experience anything with that money. She didn't see her grandson, right, like experience or enjoy that money. She didn't enjoy or experience that money. So really, she worked until she was 87 years old for nothing. Fact. See, Bill Perkins, his perspective is that we should die with zero. And not because we're selfish or didn't leave money for our children or we spent it all on ourselves or we didn't give money. That has nothing to do with leaving money for our kids. But he said, when you die, I hope that all of your kids are well into your 50s, 60s, and 70s. Think about it. How old do you want your kids to be when you die? 70? And then you're going to leave them a bunch of money when they're 70? Guess what? Newsflash, they're too old to enjoy it too. So think about it. Like, we are building the wrong way. He said, I would hope that you have used that money for your kids already, that you've given your kids the money, if that's what you want to do with it, or you've actually experienced gifting it and giving it. See, people leave these funds, right, think about Gates and Melinda, the Bill and Melinda Gates Fund. Fortunately, it's not just being left after they die. They are experiencing giving it away and seeing the impact of it today. So guess what? Make all the money in the world you want, but don't die and then give it away. Give it away now. Use it now. But see, the problem is, there are three things in his book. The problem is we don't believe that memory dividends matter. Memories pay dividends forever, guys. You know, when we sit down with our grandparents, or we sit down even with our parents, depending on our age, or maybe we don't have them anymore, so we're sitting down ourselves. We don't sit down with a group of our family, right? Barb is at a family reunion right now with 5 out of 7 siblings. I talked to her yesterday in Montana. I promise you, they're not sitting in their camp chairs, if they're in camp chairs in front of the lake. I'm picturing Barb. She's not sitting there talking about the money in her bank account, or the money she's going to leave to her children, right? All she's talking about right now are the memories that the siblings had together. Memories are the dividends that we want. We don't talk about how much money we have with our grandkids. We talk about the memories we had with them. The second part of his book, so memory dividends are critical. We have to plan those out. We have to want them. We have to, just like when we invest looking for dividends, we have to build memories looking for dividends. The second one is, he said, and this is interesting, I wanted to write him and say, hey, you stole that. But he said, experience bucketing. Figure out which experience need to be bucketed into the life that you're living right now. Here's why he said that. He said, we don't die just once. We die many times in our life, right? The high school student in us dies. The single person that we were dies. The couple with no kids dies, right? The family with kids in the house dies. At each phase, we become something else. And the person we were, I can't go back. I mean, have you ever seen a 40-year-old man try to live the experiences he was supposed to have in high school? Yeah, you know why? Because he didn't live those experiences that he was supposed to have in high school. But see, the high school student died. A single person dies. I promise you, I hope that single person dies before they get married. Because have you seen a married person all of a sudden try to live a single life? That's a problem. We have to experience bucket. We have to look at the phase that we're in and say, hey, what experiences do I want today? Such that when this person or this phase dies, I've shared that a lot. I've said that I believe that our life is in phases. The only reason why I moved out of the city and people think I'm crazy is this is a phase, right? It's a phase of life that I want to experience something. And if I didn't, guess what? I wouldn't. And that comes and goes. He shared a story, and I'm going to share one. Here's a good example of experience bucketing, right? 2 summers ago, we spent the summer in Spain. Many of you, right? You remember our partner calls. I was in Spain in the middle of the night and it was morning here or whatever. But one of the most incredible things that we did was we went to Montserrat, right? One of the most incredibly built monasteries in the world ever built. And buses came to Montserrat, right? I was there with my, at that time, 7-year-old and 10-year-old and my wife, and I was just blown away. It was incredible. One, I love Spain, right? And two, this feat of architecture and the beauty of it, just everything about it is incredible. If you haven't been there, you need to go. And there's a great winery just on the hill. But these buses came and started unloading older people. I mean, buses of older people. And you know what? They had saved, I promise, for years, right? This is probably their bucket list. And I'm talking 70, 75, maybe 80. And they got off the bus, right? And they walked the main floor of the monastery, which is beautiful, right? They experienced it. But guess what? To me, the incredible beauty is what you see when you do the 2-mile hike out that the monks used to do, right? To this point and look back. You look down on the valley and you look back at the monastery, right? And guess what? None of them could do it. Why? They didn't experience bucket. They didn't experience bucket. They didn't say, hey, this is an experience that I need to have when I have time, money, and health. This is why you do need to build a business. This is why you need to work hard, because guess what? Maybe they didn't have the money, but they could have. Everybody could have. We know that. The opportunity is there. They had time and health in their 30s and 40s. Either they didn't have the money or they didn't experience bucket. But I will not let people in our organization miss that. Why? Because the experience was different. The value of their trip, go back to memory dividends. I promise you, their dividend is lower than mine on that memory. Because I got to experience it different, because I bucketed the experience and I made sure I had that. Katie Benson, you know, when her daughter entered middle school and high school, every single year, she said to me, and we were in business together, she said, you know what, I don't care about the money. It doesn't matter what it costs. Every year I'm going to take my daughter somewhere that she chooses and she wants to go. Do you know what? She experienced bucketed. Listen, right? Could she have taken that money and invested it in Apple or stock? We've talked about that before on this call. Sure, she could have, but you know what? Memories pay better dividends than Apple stock, right? Memories pay better dividends than even Tesla stock, right? Like, memory dividends, experience bucketing, and then this is the next thing. He said we need to convert earnings into memories by following our net worth curve. And see, he believes at a certain point in time in our life, our net worth should peak, because if it just keeps on going up, the chances are, not everybody, but the chances are, right? Like you look at Bezos, he just hit $185 billion. Dude, like I appreciate your company and your drive, but you need to start giving a lot of that away and experiencing some other stuff. Like we follow that net worth curve. He said this in the book, there's a curve where you have the ability to convert your money into experiences, and the curve starts going down because it doesn't matter who we are, our health and mobility and energy will start going down as well. So where are you, and are you having the right experiences? There's an age where your net worth may peak. Make sure that your experience bucketing and your experience dividends peak as well. Fair? Now, I said I was going to come back to one thought, and it's related to trust, guys. I heard something this week, and I just wanted to share it because I think that it's so important, right? That we constantly be the people that we can be relied on, that people can rely on us. I think that, you know, as I look at the business partners that I have, right? Like I can trust, well, all of my business partners truly, or we wouldn't be business partners, but just to single out, right? Like I mentioned Katie earlier, you know, there's trust there. There's trust with John, there's trust with Holly, there's trust with my business partners. Here's what I heard. And this is why there's trust. Like, you know, even Place is a company built on trust that I had in Ben and trust that Ben had in me. Here's why. You can't talk your way out of a situation you behaved your way into, guys. Fair? That is what trust is built on. You can't talk your way out of a situation you behaved your way into. You can only behave your way out of it. And that's how you build and at times rebuild trust. So ask yourself, am I talking my way into a trusting relationship, or am I acting my way into a trusting relationship? All right, guys, it is 9 o'clock, top of the hour. Hey, John Robert, you have your hand up. Do you want to say something real quick before we go? Maybe not. That was John Robert was stretching. Congrats on your listing sold, by the way, John Robert, at 500,000. Good job. All right, guys, it's top of the hour. I appreciate you all hanging out with us for this hour. Let's really give some thought to our message this week, especially, right? Think about Apollo 13. Think about staying calm in ridiculously adverse situations. Think about staying calm when the world around you is crazy. Think about staying calm in difficult transactions. Calm is important, and we learned a lesson with Apollo 13. Remember, stay simple. Like, simplify things. Do not move towards complex. If you're too complex, you're not following the model. And remember, the model is related back to building out that canister on Apollo 13. And then let's just live our mission, guys, right? Die with zero, right? Make sure we have memory dividends. Make sure we're experience bucketing, and we recognize that there's different phases of our life that we need to get those experiences in, or time, money, and health won't line up for us, and convert those earnings into memories by following that net worth curve. All right, guys, it's all built on trust. I trust you. Thank you so much. Have a great week.